I've got a very special guest here tonight, my time, daytime up there in the UK. I'm talking to a guy who's the chairman of Laureus Sports Academy, as well as being on the board of London Harlequins and Llanelli Scarlets, and he's also a golfer. And he did play a bit of rugby once upon a time as well. And so it's welcome to Sean Fitzpatrick. Thank you very much for joining me on my podcast, Fitzy.
Morning, Moff, from a beautiful day in London. A bit cold, but a beautiful day. We've only been back a couple of weeks after having 3 months down in New Zealand, which we loved. Had a wonderful summer down there, and now back into Northern Hemisphere rugby, which has been enjoyable.
So, Fitzy, you know, because we had a bit to do with each other when you stopped playing. I can remember that got you to be, involved with New Zealand rugby, with players and what have you. Did you ever think about taking up coaching?
I think you and I probably spoke about that, but it was, 95, 96. And then obviously I was injured in 97, as you know, and with the advent of professionalism, it was a really interesting time to be involved in rugby, and especially with yourself administering the game and setting that pathway ahead. That was responsibility of us, I suppose.
Yeah.
And some really, really interesting times. But coaching wasn't really something I'd looked at, and as you'd appreciate, being involved with New Zealand rugby, being an All Black, it's all consuming. It takes up all your time. When people said to me, do you miss playing for the All Blacks? And I always said, no, I don't actually, because, I now have a relatively normal life where, as an All Black, you give heart and soul to being the best All Black you can be, and it takes it out of you. So 11 years of doing that for me was enough. And I think if you've gone to coaching, and that's what I admire a lot about these coaches that go straight from playing to coaching, is I think coaching, you're involved more. You think about the game 24/7. You don't ever shut off where the players can step away. But as a coach, it's your responsibility. I think I read an article from Nick Mallett, I think over the last couple of days, saying that he doesn't miss it at all, because the responsibility you have as a coach, and now in the professional area, you're preparing a team for somebody else, for an owner who's demanding you win. But I was fortunate, and through you, I was able to stay in the game, and we set up that Players Association right back in '98, where the players, it was quite an unusual thing. It was a foresight by you in terms of allowing the players to have a union, technically. And even now they have a very huge influence on the direction of New Zealand rugby.
Yeah, I think I want to get onto that in a minute or two. When I finished playing at not a very good level, mind you, I decided that I've got the wrong personality to be a coach. I just don't have the patience to be a coach. But I took up refereeing. Now, there are some people who would say that that would have been good for you to do, given that you refereed most of the games you played in.
So I always think, why would I take up refereeing? I've just had 11 years at the top of the game refereeing.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's obviously an aside, but we got some really interesting stuff done, and you were very instrumental at the early days of the Adidas deal as well. And I don't know if you still have a relationship with Adidas, but New Zealand Rugby certainly does.
Yeah, no, I don't. But yeah, New Zealand Rugby does, it's been great. They've been such a good partner, Moff, right back from, it was Robert Louis Dreyfus, wasn't it?
Yes, it was indeed. Yeah.
Down at the Institute, at the Rugby Academy down in Palmerston.
Yeah.
we announced that deal. It's been phenomenal, and it's such a good brand to be associated with. And now they, New Zealand Rugby is such a good brand. And during the professional era, it's got better and better as a brand, I think. And it's just, I think a reflection in terms of, the sponsors that we have in our stable at the moment.
Yeah, and you may remember that we used to take the sponsors on a small walk down here in New Zealand called the Milford Track. We'd take the sponsors, and you came.
I forgot about that.
You came along, and the sponsors had a great time.
Wonderful. With Peter Bush.
Yes.
Bushy came with us.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's really important going forward, Moff. And that's once again something, being involved in the game now. Sponsorship is so important, and the players play such a key part in making sure that the sponsors are satisfied, because especially New Zealand, without sponsorship, we're going to really struggle to compete.
So just on the business side of rugby, and I know that you've taken a big interest in the recent deal that's been announced with Silver Lake. I mean, I was very critical of the original Silver Lake deal. I didn't think it was the right way to go. However, when they got all the interested people around the table, which included the players who hadn't been there originally, they came out with a deal that I think, not that New Zealand Rugby needs me to say, yes, I think it's a good deal, but I do think it was a much better deal, and everybody got behind that, whether it's Silver Lake or New Zealand Rugby and the Players Association. And, it's most likely a blueprint for the way forward.
Yeah, I'm as you said, I'm a fan. I've looked at it. I've been involved, been looking at it for over 18 months now. I think we've been trying to get the deal over the line, and I think unfortunately people didn't really see what the Silver Lake people were like.
No.
Everyone just assumes they're from Silicon Valley. They're American tech guys. They're going to throw a bit of money and then take the money away. And they're not like that at all. They're hugely passionate about rugby. They see the All Blacks. Obviously, they see them as a major brand in world rugby, and one they want to be associated with. And they're stuck around. And I don't think there's too many of those sort of people that would have hung around this long to do the deal they've done. So they're very involved. Their main thing is being able to connect with the fans, and that's what we need to do more of. To the right sort of fans, across from you and me right down to the 5, 6, 7-year-olds, and make the sport appealing to them as much as it's appealing to us. And I think the numbers they said, we have near close on 1 billion fans globally. Right. But we only have 800,000 registered All Black fans.
Yes.
So there's a huge scope to connect with a lot of people going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I think where it's landed is very good for New Zealand Rugby. And I was told that at one time there were about 8 captains, ex-All Black captains, on a call with Silver Lake, and they sort of started to understand how much rugby means to this country. As you know, I'm an Australian, but I am I'm so passionate about the All Blacks, and very proud to have played a part in the the change to professional rugby. But I think there's no. I mean, whenever I think about it, I always used to say that an individual All Black is held in such high regard, but when you guys assemble as a group and moved around, in Wellington or somewhere like that as a group of players, I mean, the reaction from the people is extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, and that's through the whole process, that's been very clear that the past All Blacks of the game, of our game, are very involved in rugby going forward. And I think that's a huge benefit for us, because, you know, as a past All Black, you know, the legacy of the jersey, sustaining a culture of success, all those things are so important. And the players that hand their jersey back are the ones that can really make sure that the guys that have got the jersey at the moment adhere to those traditions, to the respect of the jersey. And I think Silver Lake, as you said, I think they became very aware. And if you live in North Canterbury, you're in the community. Our professional game is in pretty good shape, but our community game and the amateur game is not in good shape, without question. And, you know, we need to make sure that the community game, the base of the game, is really strong. And that's, once again, where money, as long as it's directed the right way, can help fix that part of the game, which is, you know, and that's why I started playing rugby, because we were at college rifles every Saturday. You know, mum, dad, and the 4 kids. And
that's where All Blacks are born, Fitzy, you know, like yourself and all the other All Blacks. They came from somewhere, didn't they? And there's those...
And we dream. That's the lovely thing. We dream of being All Blacks, and that's what I want them to continue. I want them to play sport, but I want them to dream about being the next Bowden Barrett or you know, which is, you know, George Bridge, those sort of players. So iconic.
So you just touched on it a little bit before, and you've done really well post your rugby career. And there have been quite a few guys that have done that, actually. But there are also, and I'm going to be speaking to David Corkery, you know, in the next little while, the ex-Irish international, who's, I think, suffered a little bit from, you know, the letdown from being a star to you know. And I call it when the phone stops ringing. And it happened to me. You know, when I left Welsh Rugby, nobody wanted to talk to me anymore after that. You know,
I do hear your name mentioned a lot up there, Moff. Do you know that David Moffat?
Bloody bastard he is, you know. Anyway,
before you say anything, Moff is a good mate of mine. Okay.
Yeah, mate. Don't go to Pontypridd. That they hate me with a passion there. But how do you see this transition from being a you know, world famous player or in the All Blacks, you know, making the transition out of rugby? And so many don't do that so well. I mean, and you know, do you have a view about that?
There's not. You say many don't. I sort of tend to disagree. I think most professional rugby players are prepared, you know, to life after rugby. And I suppose one of the things about being an All Black is that you don't see yourself as a superstar. You don't see yourself as iconic, or because that's how our game is built, on humility. And, you know, if I get too big for my boots, you know, my mother will stand on me, my wife will stand on me, my teammates will stand on me, pull your head in, which actually prepares you, you know, for life after. And I think one of the benefits about our professional sport is that even if you're the best player in the world, earning the best money, 9 times out of 10, unless you've been pretty lucky with your investments, you're going to have to work. You know, 99% of professional rugby players have to have a life after rugby in terms of working. So in terms of your question, how they prepare for that, I think they're pretty smart in making sure that they invest their money wisely. They surround themselves with the right people. And I think especially in the game up here and in New Zealand, you get pretty good advice. We're lucky that we have people around us that can advise us where to go, because there's not too many of the guys, you know, the John Kirwins of the world, for example, that can make a life after. You know, there's 2 or 3 in each generation. The Dan Carters of the world that can go on and make a living out of rugby. Post their career.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and there are a small number that actually can go into the media, like yourself and Jeff Wilson and those sort of
Mm-hmm.
guys. And there are other guys up in the Northern Hemisphere similarly who do that. But
Yep.
it's a, you know, it is a major transition, and it's really good to hear you know, and you're there and you talk to a lot of your mates and people that you know in this system, that they're actually not that badly off, which is really good to hear, actually. So you're on the board of Harlequins and also the Scarlets.
No, I'm not on their board anymore, Moff.
Oh, you're not? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
I'm in an advisory role there.
Oh, okay.
And they have done so well. In terms of turning themselves around, really. You know, winning the premiership in 2012, and then we had one international player in that day, and then to turn it around and win the way they did last year was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we've got a guy called Owen Eastwood. I don't know if you know him, a Kiwi.
No.
I think he's from down your way, actually, in Canterbury. And he works with a lot of high-performing teams up here in America. He works for the English football.
Oh, okay.
And he talks about the culture and, you know, having safe environments, playing for your tribe, and he's done a phenomenal job. And you can just see the enthusiasm. And coming from an administrator, what the Premiership is now delivering is a fantastic product.
Yeah.
Well,
it might be worth
developing.
It might be worthwhile me talking to him. Actually, I'll get his contact details off you. You know.
What I always say, and you obviously you had a huge interest in Welsh rugby, and you asked me before, how's Welsh rugby going? I said, well, the international team's doing okay, but the regional team's not performing well at all.
No.
And without a good professional club game, you're not going to develop an international game. You just the two examples at the moment where you have Ireland and France, two best teams in the world at the moment.
Yep.
They have amazing club rugby. You know, the Leinsters, the Ulsters, those sort of teams win week in, week out, put pressure on the players, and the top 14 at the moment is a good competition. Yeah. So, you develop a good club game that flows on to the professional game. But
well, when I got to Wales, they had something close to 12 professional teams, and we got it down to 4. And that was the regional concept, you know. And basically, I just pretty much copied what was happening here in New Zealand. But they never, the fans there have never taken to the regional teams. They just, you know, they think they've got a mortgage on parochialism, you know, and it's all about the valleys and the national team. Do you? I mean, and having an involvement in Scarlets, do you think there is a different model that they could actually now look at? Because when you start something, that's the right. When we Super 12, right? When we started Super 12, it was terrific. Then they went to 15 and 18, and it was all over the place. So what you start off with might not be what you end up with. So do you see a different model that might work for Wales?
I think probably 4 teams, Moff, is too many. One too many, possibly. But what we need, and that's why, in terms of the global calendar, we need a club window. Yeah. And United Rugby Championship, the URC. Yeah. Admittedly, COVID has really hurt. Unfortunately, just COVID has wiped out in terms of, the Scarlets, I think, only played 6 games, where other teams have 7 games. But ultimately, unless we can have our stars, our international players playing club rugby, we're not going to create a good product. No. And people aren't going to go to Park the Scarlets to watch the Scarlets play on a Friday night of an international day, because we haven't got Liam Williams, Jonathan Davis. We haven't got those sort of players. Wynne Jones. We haven't got them playing for us. So we need to be able to create that window where we can have international players. And in saying that also, Moff, and it's worked in New Zealand because our international players, our Aaron Smiths of the world, he wants to play for the Highlanders.
Yeah.
And you can see the burning desire he has, the passion he has representing the Highlanders.
Yeah.
And then he plays well there, and it makes it easy to pick him to play for the All Blacks.
Yeah.
Where you don't, and no disrespect, Wayne Pivac has his international group of players that are going to the World Cup in 2023, and if they don't play too many games for the clubs, I don't think that makes a difference.
No, I mean,
it's not right.
No, it's not, and I think that 4 teams is too many. I mean, I've written recently that I think that they should actually just go back to the clubs system and have 3 clubs. Do away with the provincial, names. Go back to Llanelli, Cardiff, and then one other. Now, whether that's Swansea or Newport, I don't know, but have one other team. You got to have Llanelli and Cardiff as 2 standalones, and then have another one. And then I think you've got to have a look. The ideal, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, the ideal would be to play in England. The three teams playing.
Well, ideally, if we could have one competition.
Yeah, British and Irish League.
Yeah.
That would be, and divisions.
Yeah, and getting it back to 3. We have the same argument, don't we, in Super Rugby with Australia.
Yes.
They need one less team to make them more competitive.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that even now at the start of the competition that, for example, the Rebels are not going to be competitive.
No. But politics gets in the way, mate, at times. That's a problem, and self-interest. I hope that Wales continues to do well at the international level. But as you say, there's guys like your owner, for example, at the Scarlets, who's a very passionate guy and, putting money in, and they need to get results and a return. And the union has got to get right in behind them. Yeah,
very much so. So do you think you might come back to Wales, Moff?
Do you think they'd have me, Fitzy? I don't think so, mate. No, I've got to actually.
We need Welsh rugby to be strong.
Yes, absolutely.
We talk about this in terms of the Silver Lake and the CBCs of the world.
Yeah.
We have got such good products globally with the British and Irish Lions, the Six Nations, the Championship, the All Blacks, the Welsh, the English, the Irish, the Scots. Such good products.
Yeah.
South Africa. That we need to make sure that we package them so that people want to watch it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's playing it at the right time of the day too, and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's always very difficult to get the balance right though in this day and age.
Yeah.
But it's it exercises my mind quite a lot from time to time.
That's quite challenging.
Wait, how did you get that job?
Well, back in 2000, we were set up in 2000, and there were 35 founder members, which I was fortunate enough to be one of those.
Oh, right.
And so Johan Rupert from South Africa.
Yep, I know Johan Rupert. Yeah.
And it's just growing. It's a phenomenal organisation that we were set up to celebrate excellence in sport, which we still do through the awards. And now we have the Sport for Good Foundation, which started in 2001.
Yeah.
Where we use sport as a mechanism for change, and that was our founding patron was Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
And that's what he said. So I entrust you to go and spread the word globally through sport. And especially, what's going on in the Ukraine at the moment is just horrendous. And if we can use sport to try and bring peace to places like that, because we're powerful. We've got a lot of really influential people.
Yeah.
We have a Russian and Alexei Nemov, and then we have Sergei Budka, who's Ukraine.
Yeah.
For them to be holding hands and saying, we need peace, we need to come together.
Yeah, it's great names. There's some great names on that list of sports ambassadors in Laureus, and I'd recommend that people go and have a look at it on the website. You can see them all on there, you know, it's.
We do have a lot of big names, Moff. But one of the questions that I always ask them when we invite them, you have to be retired to be a member.
Yeah.
So when I went to Chris Hoy, for example, you know, I you're one of the greatest track riders of a generation. Would love you to consider being a Laureus Academy member. I said, but there's one criteria with that, is that you must support the Sport for Good Foundation, and everyone would rather be an academy member of the Sport for Good Foundation, just purely for the work it does globally through, you know, over 300 projects globally we support now. It's just phenomenal.
No, it's fantastic. And is it a full-time role for you? Do you have to spend much time?
Well, obviously COVID's been I went down to the office last week down in Fulham for the first time in about 2 years.
Oh, Jesus.
So the office hasn't been open, and it's been especially the foundation, because a lot of our projects are safe havens for the kids.
Yeah.
So that's been really stressful during the lockdowns, etc. But they've all survived, and it's probably in reality about 2 days a week probably.
Oh, okay. So what's the significance of number 19 on your Laureus top there? Is there any?
This is our 2019 shirt.
Oh, 2019. Right, I got you. I thought.
But that's our 19th year, actually. We've been going 21 years now.
21 years. Oh, mate.
And we've got the awards. We're doing digital awards now, and that will be later, early next month.
Early next month. Giving me any tips?
No, can't do that.
Oh, mate, it's great talking to you as always. I really enjoy our chats. They're not frequent enough these days, but I will be getting up. I will be getting up to the UK soon, I hope. We can catch up. Yeah,
well, we'd love to have you up here. We've got the Irish coming to New Zealand, which will be a massive test series in the July window. And then the All Blacks back up here in the autumn, which will be 12 months out from the World Cup. So, and they're playing England on this next trip up. They're playing Wales, Scotland, and England. Yeah. Well, if the English could ever work out what sort of game they want to play, they might. I think they've been quite smart, actually. Having an Aussie as a coach, they're. You know what the Aussies do. They work in these cycles. They were the first ones to, work in a 4-year cycle. Yeah. They don't mind losing games occasionally if they're going to breed a player for the World Cup. And he's got the young talent up here, Moff, at the moment is phenomenal. Is it? We haven't really seen enough. It was unfortunate on Saturday with the sending off of Ewells. Yes. The Marcus Smiths of the world, the Dom Brandts, Marchants. I'm mentioning all the Harlequins players. But there's some real talent that in 18 months' time they're going to be a lot more seasoned and ready for the big stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And will Ireland? Do you think they'll send a full strength team down here? Yeah, most definitely. They've I think it's on Saturday, as we've seen during the Six Nations. They're building quite nicely, so it'll be good. It's a good opportunity for us. I think of all teams globally, countries, New Zealand's probably been the hardest hit in terms of the competition that we've been able to have. Yeah. And I can even see during Super Rugby now, we're hindered by not being able to have overseas teams coming in, other than the Pacifica teams, which is an issue going forward. Even our Northern Hemisphere tour last year, that was so hard on the players. Yeah. So the next sort of 18 months is going to be crucial in terms of our development. Absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for making the time. Thank you, Bob. You're looking good too. Oh, yeah. Looking well. Yeah, no, keep on. I'm actually 75 in May, so you're young. I'm only young, yeah. Chicken. No, but I was going to say, but I've decided to go on a podcast journey because
I'm learning something new, and it keeps my brain young. So, you know, I'm enjoying it.
You need to do.
Yeah.
North Canterbury.
Oh, yeah. But mate,
Nice part of the world.
yeah, it is. Yeah, and we got 15 acres here, so
Oh,
you know, it's
bit of fun.
Todd Blackadder country around here, and you know.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, other, you know.
Bobby?
Yeah.